Welcome to the St. Louis Home Chat. I'm your host, Angela Dillmon with the Dillmon Group at Keller Williams Realty Chesterfield, the #1 selling office in St. Louis. At the Dillmon Group, our average sale price is 101.51% of the asking price. Today, we're here to add value to your life, and we're going to do that today by talking about Medicaid. You're like, wow, Medicaid? Really? What are you talking about Medicaid for? Well, there's been some changes in Medicaid. There's been some different things going on that affect your assets. And so today, to help us kind of maneuver this minefield of Medicaid is our guest, Maggie Reckert. And Maggie's with the Next Step Elder Assist. And we're going to talk about seniors and permanently disabled people when it comes to Medicaid. That's the two areas that we're going to talk about. So Maggie, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
So to start us off, tell us what the difference is between Medicare and Medicaid.
Medicare is a program you are entitled to when you are 65 years of age or older or permanently and totally disabled, versus Medicaid is a program that you have to apply for and meet certain eligibility requirements to qualify.
Okay, so do I have one or the other, either Medicare or Medicaid, or do I have both?
You can have both. Medicare would always be your primary insurance, and then Medicaid would act as a supplement. Medicaid has additional benefits, though, that Medicare does not have.
Oh, okay, so there's some additional benefits. So you're going to have both of them at the same time, and Medicaid's like a supplement.
Correct.
So what are some of the additional benefits it has?
Medicaid will help pay for nursing home care. They will help pay for assisted living. They will also help pay for in-home care, in addition to pharmacy coverage.
Oh, wow. Okay, pharmacy coverage. That's awesome. That's a lot of money right there if you're on a lot of pharmacy items.
Yes.
And which can get large when you're older. Okay, so when you're on Medicaid, I think that my brain says to me, wow, I'm going to go on Medicaid when I run out of money. So is that kind of only the only requirement for going on Medicaid, or are there other requirements that I need, and how far out of money do I need to be?
Right. There are other requirements to qualify, so you have to be 65 years of age or older, or permanently and totally disabled. You have to be a resident of Missouri with the intent to remain. You have to be a U.S. citizen. There are some exceptions to that.
Okay.
You also fall under what's called a transfer of property provision. Well, they'll review if you've transferred any assets over the last 5 years. It could cause disqualification for what's called the vendor programs, which is the nursing home program and one of the home health programs.
Okay, so your assets are really coming into play here. So what is the look back period on assets?
Yes, if a person has transferred assets and it happened more than 5 years ago, there would be no disqualification.
All right, so you're good to go.
If there's a transfer within the 5-year window, it doesn't mean you're disqualified for 5 years. Instead, Medicaid has a formula they use based on how much you transferred, and then that will determine how many months or years you would be disqualified for the program. So a person can have transfers in the 5-year period.
Okay, so you can. So what are assets? What kind of things are considered assets?
Savings, checking, stocks, bonds, IRAs, 401ks, U.S. savings bonds. Things that would not be considered as assets would be your life insurance cash value if it's less than $1,500, a burial plan, whatever value as long as it's irrevocable, but then you lose the exemption on the insurance, so it's like an either or.
All right.
You can have one automobile, and then you can also have a home, but there is kind of an exception on that home too.
Okay, so you can own a home, but if I transfer the home or the car, that would be a problem in the last 5 years. But if I currently own my own home and I have one car and I need to go into the nursing home, you're telling me I could keep that home?
You could keep the home, you could keep the car, and as a single person, you could have $2,000 remaining kind of in reserve in a savings or checking account.
Okay.
The exemption on the home, however, is for your lifetime, which means the home's not counted as long as you are living, but the state of Missouri will file a lien against the property after you're on the Medicaid program for 120 days. So the state is basically keeping a tab of what they're paying for your care, which they will then recover when the person passes away.
Wow, so is that a new thing, or when did that change? Is that a new change?
It actually came into effect back in 2006. It took a
Okay.
couple of years for the state of Missouri to kind of come up to speed. It's called a TEFRA lien is what they use. So it's very common now, though, that people are getting their notices after you apply. Part of the application, you agree to the lien. So the majority of our clients sell the property prior to going on Medicaid.
Just go ahead and sell it. Now, let's say I know I need to go on a Medicaid soon because I need to get into a nursing home. I'm running out of money, and I just decide, okay, I'm going to sell my home because I don't want to have all the state take all the equity out of it with all the liens. So now I've sold it. Now what? Do I have to use all that money then for my care in the nursing home before it kicks in?
You could, or potentially you could gift or transfer some of those assets. So you, again, can have transfer of assets within the 5-year look-back period. For every individual, it can be a different amount because their income comes into play, as well as how much their cost of care is, and then the value of the home. So there is a bit of a formula that goes into it to determine how much of the home value you can actually keep, and then how long the penalty would be.
Okay, all right. So I can transfer some of it if I go ahead and sell it now.
Correct.
Now let's just say I'm married and I need to go in the nursing home, but my spouse is fine and my spouse doesn't want to go into a nursing home. How does that work if we still have the house?
Yeah, so for married couples, there's a kind of a separate program. It's called a division of assets, where Medicaid will review what the married couple's assets are. The resource limits are different. They're much higher. So a community spouse gets to keep a much larger amount in the assets. And then the home is exempt and a lien is not filed when you have a community spouse living in the home. So that does avoid the lien process. It's also true if you had an adult disabled child. They will not put a lien on the property. So for married couples, the program is a lot more generous. There's a lot more options we have and things that we can do with the assets.
Okay, so am I smart to start looking at these things prior to this 5-year look back?
If a person wants to try to protect the assets that they have or their life savings, the sooner they do it, the better off they are because it gets the 5-year waiting period started.
Okay, so what kind of things can I do to protect the assets if I want to do it ahead of time before the 5 years?
It could potentially be placing them into an irrevocable trust would be an option. It could be transferring assets over to the children. The children also have the option, once they receive the assets, they can create a trust. Some cases, families will do a limited liability corporation after the assets are transferred. That would be typical if they have maybe numerous pieces of property. It might be more advantage to having an LLC versus having it in a trust. So there's really a couple different kind of
strategies.
options. Yes.
Now, so do I just sit down with an attorney to figure that out, or do I need to sit down with you and an attorney to figure out this whole Medicaid thing?
Yeah, my typical clients, when they come in, number one, a lot are referred by attorneys, but I will sit down and go through all the different kind of Medicaid rules and regulations, and then we do come up with different ideas or different options, and then they're free to go to their attorney with my recommendations, and then I work in coordination with the attorney on kind of what's the best strategy for that family.
Okay, so whether it's before a 5-year period or it's within the 5-year period, because you know you're getting close, either way, you need to sit down with an expert like Maggie to figure out the different strategies that you can use to try to, I guess, protect some of your assets and some of your money.
Correct.
Because that's really difficult when you just completely run
And it's
out.
also just educating yourself on what programs are available. So a lot of my clients might be home and perfectly healthy, but they know that maybe they've not saved enough money to finance their care. And so they want to know what it would look like if they did start needing maybe in-home care, assisted living, or nursing home care. So they want an understanding of how the programs work, what kind of benefits they would get, and that in fact, you know, that they could get coverage.
Okay, so how many different programs are there in Medicaid?
There are about 13 programs for the seniors or those with disabilities. So if you're a senior over 65 or someone who's permanently and totally disabled, and that would include the blind pension and the supplemental aid to the blind program.
Wow, so 13 different programs. I had no idea. So what a big ball of wax Medicaid is. And there's so many rules and so many different formulas, and sounds like a lot of different strategies, whether you're before or after the 5-year look back, that you can utilize, that you really do need to sit down with someone. So if you have a loved one, or you know someone who is aging or maybe in ill health, and you need to start thinking about this earlier. As we were talking, and you were saying that most people don't do this early enough.
That is correct. Most families wait until a crisis has happened, and then they go into kind of panic mode and want to figure out what are their options that they can do, with usually leaving saying, we should have done this 5 years ago. But at least they do leave with knowing they do still have some options that are available for them that they can take advantage of, so maybe not all is lost.
Right? Okay, so worth your time to sit down and talk about it. And I know that Maggie helped me on my mom's Medicaid application. So I came in and found out I needed to do a wild and crazy spend down over a 3-day period, which I did. And then I gave her a mound of paperwork, and believe me, it was probably a stack about this big. And she took that mound of paperwork and she did the application. She submitted it. So she submitted an application in May, and we were approved in July, and it was smooth as silk. It went really great, and actually, even though we weren't approved till July, it actually was retroactive back to April, which was a really big help because we needed April coverage. And so she knew how to do it. She knew how to get it done. It's totally worth your time to sit down with the Next Step Elder Assist with Maggie Record and figure out what your options are. I hope this helps you today to understand that Medicaid really has got a lot of formulas and a lot of different strategies to use to protect your assets. And I really want you to take some time to think about it and start talking with your parents about it. It's a very important issue. I appreciate you joining us today here at the Dillmon Group, where we're helping you live your dream lifestyle, build wealth, and leave legacies that matter. Join us next week. Until then, have a great week.